So this session is multi-site on a budget. Kind of what drove this is my first WFX conference was 3 years ago when it was in Houston coming in, and that was when our church was just in the beginnings of figuring out how are we going to do multi-site. We knew that that was our vision. We knew that was where we were headed, and so we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this work practically? We come in and, I'm sitting in these sessions and hearing from these churches that are doing it really, really well. But they were way farther down the road than we were. We're looking at, okay, well, they do this and they do that. And holy cow, that's a huge investment. And we're nowhere close to being able to do that. So, was really blessed to make some great contacts, meet with some people that I was able to follow up with, and build relationships and learn that, okay, that's not the only model. That's not the only way to do things. There are ways to reach people, to be very effective in ministry, to meet people where they are in their community without just spending crazy tons of money. So that's kind of what I wanted to do today. I will introduce the guys here and let them talk for just a second about who they are, their church, kind of how they came about multi-site, and then their basic vision and kind of processes for how they do multi-site. So we've got Dennis Troy here, and I'll let him go.
Yeah, Dennis Troy, North Coast Church. We're in Vista, California. We're running about 8,500 on a weekend now. I've been there 17 years. We run 24 services over 3 campuses on a weekend. So that's Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, over 3 campuses. 5 of those, we have venues on site at our church, as well as, like I said, 2 other off-site campuses that run services. It's all concurrent, same week. So we're what we call sermon-based small groups. So our small groups are based on our sermon, so they have to be concurrent with the week, or at least that's our model. And have a crew of about 70 volunteers that help run that on the weekends, and I think roughly 10 to 15 part-time and full-time paid staff to run that.
Hi, I'm Jeff Vandergiesen, Mars Hill Church in Seattle. I've been on staff there for a little bit over 7 years now, and we've got 14 locations. We originally did like T1s between all the sites and did it live. That was crazy. We did. We sunk a lot of money in on the front end, and so I think what you can see from our story is that like doing it cheap sometimes is better. So what we did is lots of T1s on the front end. That didn't work. We did satellite. That was expensive, and we didn't like that. It was really complicated and took a lot of knowledge and even extra staff that we just couldn't afford and didn't want to do. Airtime's expensive. What other solutions did we do? We did North Point, where you had like the big center screen and the tighter side screens. And we abandoned that pretty quick. And where we ended up was doing week delay DVDs, and it's Blu-ray. It's 1080p. It looks great. And it's really, really cheap. That's the longest thing we've actually stuck with. We've done that for over 2.5 years now, and it's worked really well. So we've tried lots of expensive options, and we ended up just doing week delay DVD for a lot of reasons. So,
Andy, you want to introduce yourself and kind of give a minute of your story?
Yeah, I'm Andy Mickey. I'm tech director at Christ Fellowship in McKinney. It's about 36 miles, roughly north on 75 in the Dallas area. Started part-time as a sound engineer, came on full-time as tech director, I think 3 or 4 years ago. We came in, we'd started the venue solution, and for a number of reasons, we put in a entry-level video system, and we're doing the venues. It lasted probably 2 years, and we canceled all of them but our video cafe. So we're like, okay, we have this video system, and it's working. And then about 2 years ago, we decided upon becoming a multi-site location, and I like to say we were a little multi-personality because we didn't know what to do and we wanted to do everything. And then in the process, I started sucking my thumb because the more I heard of vision, I I thought, we got to narrow this down. So what we did is I had no budget, and I kind of took a different approach because I didn't want to invest money in something that wasn't going to turn out to be the solution. So we adopted a DVD solution like Mars Hill did, but one thing we were looking into streaming. Live streaming was just coming online, and so I grabbed an old desktop computer I had and downloaded Adobe Flash Media Live Encoder and signed up for a free account with Ustream and threw it on a WordPress webpage, linked our webpage to it, and started doing that. And I purposely said, let's not announce this because I'm driving blind, don't know what I'm doing, I got to figure this out. Certain Sundays it went down, other Sundays it worked great. And with the Ustream, because it was free, we had advertisements where I didn't care. I just wanted to test it out. And we get like car dealership ads, and which I was fine with, except until what broke the camel's back on that was one Sunday we had you ever seen the Tron guy on Saturday Night Live in this stretchy outfit with the belly? And we had a similar guy like that jump up in a flash advertisement in front of the sermon dancing on the screen on our webpage. And at that decision, we made the decision we need to move to a better content delivery network solution. And I can go into more details about that, but we use a company called Net Broadcasting right now. And so now we're in 2.0, as I call it, getting ready to move to 3.0, which would enable mobile devices. And the Roku box, you've heard of the Roku box? We're in the process of creating our own TV channel, be a private TV channel though for our venues, because I'm going to be sending close to high def to them. And I want 300 people at home watching high def church and not coming in. So we're going to try to control it so it's for our multiple church plants and venues.
All right, well, I'm Brian Turnbull. I am with The Journey in St. Louis. I actually just realized today that last week was 4 years since I came on staff, so I've been around the church about 5 years, on staff about 4. And we do kind of in between these guys, where Dennis is live and Jeff is a week delay. We capture our video of our Saturday night services and then play them back at our other campuses on Sunday. We've got 4 campuses, 5 total venues, running 10 services on a weekend, about 3,500 people in attendance. And so we're delivering that file. We capture Saturday night, really rough, edit, in, out, done, and then throw it on Dropbox and send it to the other campuses. They play it out on Sunday morning. And it's getting the job done. But one of the things I wanted to hear from you guys was just the vision behind what got you guys into Multisite. Was it, oh crap, we've got to do something, and kind of stumbled into it by accident? Was there a very specific drive behind what pushed your church toward Multisite? For us, it was both. It kind of happened by accident in that we were a very young church, had only been around for a couple of years, renting space at a small community center, and it just wasn't going to work. People were crammed in everywhere, and there's a fitness center on the other side of this glass wall with people doing yoga, and it wasn't working for us. So we found a church that would let us do some services in the evening in their facility, and so we just by necessity became Multisite. But then in doing that, we realized, man, this really works out. We've got people driving into these services from this location over here, from these neighborhoods. Why don't we take those people, use them as our core group, and start another campus over here? And it has just really been amazing to see how we can just be involved more directly in those neighborhoods by being able to put a campus where they live versus asking them to drive in and attend church there. So like I said, for us it was both. It was accidental, and also in doing that, in having to do that, realized, this is a strategy that we're going to stick with, and has really, really been effective. So what about you guys?
Yeah, we started our first video venue, so on-campus venue, in '98. Some consider us, I guess, the grandfathers of the multi-site movement.
We do.
Yeah, I know. We looked around in '98. We were completely full. We were in a warehouse facility. We looked around. We were running 4 or 5 service times, and every good service time option was taken. We don't want to start a 1:36 service time or something weird like that. So we looked around the country and thought, okay, is anybody doing overflow, right? Video overflow. And we saw, I think it was Steve Shogan's church in the Vineyard was doing overflow, and we just thought, we don't want to do that. It's like a punishment, right? You ever been to an overflow room, and it's just like, it's usually your visitors that have to go there, right? Because they're late, they don't know the time, and you stick them in a room and they're just watching a screen. It's like, oh, so we saw that and we said, there's no way we're going to do this. So we had an empty warehouse across from our location, and we said, well, we're already paying for this room. It's empty. So let's stick a projector up there and a screen, and let's try to funnel people over to that location from our live teaching room. Well, we thought, who's going to go over there, right? Unless we add something, and we call them reward elements. What kind of reward elements would draw somebody over to a room that's playing teaching on video? Well, we said we definitely have to have live worship in there. We can't just have a video worship. That wouldn't be appealing. I wouldn't go to that. So we did it, and we decided, it's going to be different from our live. So it would be a reward element would be, if you don't like live worship, why don't you go to something that's a little more unplugged and acoustic? And believe it or not, I wouldn't go to something like that, but there were a ton of people that did not like the worship. That's a good church, so they could continue to sit through it. So that was a reward element we added. And then at the time, 98, there weren't too many churches that were serving coffee in their service. And so we thought that would be a novel idea. People would go because they can drink coffee in the service, right, and have pastries. So we called it the Video Cafe. That was our first video venue. And it was all based on what kind of elements that would reward people to choose that over the live teaching, because that's really all they were choosing it over, was the live teaching part. And then since then, we've grown with multiple venues on site that offer different types of worship services. So we have the Edge venue, which is a little edgier than live. We've got our Traditions venue, which is obviously traditional, hymns. We have a country gospel venue. So we added these venues as reward elements, but it all started as a need because we were too full in our auditorium. And like Brian said, it was by accident. We discovered, wow, this actually, people will actually go to this. And then we started offsite campuses, which are a little bit different because we didn't choose a style of worship for them. We wanted to mimic our live venue and put them in locations across the area.
What venue do you go to?
The live venue.
With your family?
Actually, it's funny. My wife, she chooses the live venue. She will not go watch a sermon on video. And the reality is you're going to have 60% of your congregation will only go, whether it's a traditional reason. Again, that's why we chose the reward elements, because there are people that don't care that it's on video, but there are definitely people that are only live people. And you're always going to have that. You can't get rid of that, and you can't fight that. But over 70% of our church watches the teaching on video every weekend, right?
Yeah, we're trying to do away with it, in that people just won't know where Pastor Mark is at anymore. So he's capturing live all over the place, and it's been pretty unpredictable. But we were right at that 60% for a long time. That 60% of the church was wherever he was. But we've kind of blown through that, and I think the church it's like 75%, 80% see him on video every week now, as opposed to live. So once you get over that threshold, somewhere you slide over, and it's more people see him on video than not, and that kind of gives you some new freedoms. And it's hard to walk your body, the congregation, through from it being live to being video. And the biggest piece, I think, with that is just the community. People that show up to watch the video, it's not about the video. Like, it's about hearing the gospel being preached and being convicted and responding to that. But it's more about the community and the people that are there with you. And for that becomes the identity. It's no longer about seeing Mark live. It's about seeing your friends that are walking through hard times with you. So it's what we found for a long time was that our video locations were healthier churches than where Mark was live, because there wasn't much of a consumer. It was, people would come and check it out, and they'd either get saved and get baptized and be part of the body and quickly assimilate and just being involved, or they would move on. Whereas in Ballard, where Pastor Mark's been live for many years, people, we probably upwards of I don't know, maybe 20% are just looky-loos or people hanging out, or it might even be a bigger number of people who just are honestly filling seats that should not even be there. Like they should just leave because they've heard the Bible preached to them for 5 years now, and they're not doing anything. Like it might be better for you to move on to something else at this point. What was the question? I'm just responding to things I've heard, and I'm thinking.
It was, did you kind of fall into it accidentally, or was there a strategy or a vision to going multi-site?
Yeah, so we bought a warehouse that was about 35,000 square feet, a block north of our current building. So, and we planned on doing kind of a larger campus in Ballard, which is a neighborhood a few minutes out of downtown Seattle. And so we got to that point of buying that property by saying, you can't buy land in Seattle. So Texas is crazy. Like people are given 200 acres or 1,300 acres, or they go buy 5 acres and it's no big deal. You can't buy 10,000 square feet in Seattle you can't afford it. Like it's just, land is so expensive. The idea of securing a piece of property in the city, which we were highly committed to, that would have enough parking is just not going to happen. But we don't want to close the door on the church and just say, hey, we're done. Whoever's here is here, and we're going to wait till we all die. Like, even just let alone the problem of we're a young church and we're going to have a lot of kids, and people are going to have to leave because there's nowhere for them to go. And going back to that overflow idea, same thing. Like overflow rooms are good for seasons where you're absorbing a lot of growth, but they're not sustainable. People will come only for, I don't know, whenever our overflow rooms are filling up, it only lasts for a month or two before people just realize, hey, if I'm late for church, I'm not sitting in the overflow, and I'll just catch a different service, or I just won't go. And that's what it becomes. So it's like, we know that overflows are good for absorbing short influxes of growth, and if we don't add more services or plant a church for wherever those people are coming from, we're just going to lose them, and we don't want that to happen. So we bought that property. We were going to do another large location right there in Ballard. Fast forward, the city basically said no, so we ended up planting farther north, and we've now used that warehouse it's a warehouse for planting churches. So we've got our creative team, we've got a studio in there, we've got our central offices, we've got Costco type storage and forklifts, and it's become insane, the number of opportunities of planting Marshall churches. And so we're actually using that space to plant. So we bought that building thinking, well, we'll just do 2 churches and that's where we'll be, and God's plan and how it's unfolded is like, no, this actually turned into an asset that we're using to plant churches. And so we kind of fell into it in that we wanted more of the one location big thing, even though it might have been multi-venue like what Dennis has done, but it just wasn't, we weren't able to do it. And so we did this thing up in Shoreline, and it blew up. So we did this thing, church over in West Seattle gave us their building, that blew up, and 5 years later we got 14 of them. So.
Yeah, and I was going to add, because you said something about community, in the beginning, the people. We just a year and a half ago moved into a brand new facility. So we went from the warehouse facilities. If you've ever been out to our church at the old place, we built on 40 acres of land we bought and built our own, about 40 acres, yeah, sorry. We did that in California too. Originally, when we were in the plans to build the new facility, we were looking at a 2,200 seat auditorium. And we quickly realized when video venues were developing that Pastor Larry, his vision was that he wants, when you come to our church, the community aspect, he wants within 30 seconds to a minute, you be able to see somebody you know. And we felt like a 2,200 seat auditorium would not accomplish that. So we kept the idea of video venues. Our largest venue right now, our video venue can hold about 900 seats. So we have 2 of those, 2 900-seat auditoriums, and then a 500-seat and about a 300-seat auditorium, and then a small cafe venue that holds maybe about 70 or 80 in there. So we took the big one and decided we're not going to build that big one. We'd rather do the venues where people can actually see and meet. And it was that whole community aspect. So that actually became a philosophy, by accident, that people want to see each other. And the other side was that people said they could see the pastor clearer on a bigger screen than actually in the live venue, and it was conducive to that.
Yeah, with us, it was kind of accident. I like to say it was Lord ordained in all this. You know, you make your best plans and things fail and other opportunities present themselves. And our whole venue thing didn't completely fail. Our video cafe has taken off. We started, and that started by accident. We had moms that couldn't fit in the cry room, so we had this old TV we threw in and put some amplified speakers out there, and then once we saw that turn out, we did a professional, did an install, and then we got a Spanish congregation, so we started just an RF broadcast in our services, Spanish translation. Well, then that started growing, so we moved them to our chapel, and that grew to 50, and then one of the guys attending it from California was going to DTS, Jaime, so we asked Jaime come on and start preaching. He came part-time, and now they're in the gym as our Spanish venue. They're pushing 200. He's full-time. And then as multi-site goes, there's Pate Rehabilitation Center, which is for mental illness issues in Collin County where we live. And so we're doing, similar to St. Louis. I just met these guys, so I forget their names, I'm sorry. We just head and tell it. I archive all of our sermons on digital image files on our server so I can burn DVDs real quick. So we'll send a series at a time up there at the volunteer that will play the messages with our study guides. We just started a jail ministry doing the same thing. And that costs us, aside from the 30 minutes it takes me to head and tell it and do a couple tweaking and an hour of encoding, it's 50 cents a DVD to pull that off. I mean, that's cheap. That's as cheap as you can get. And then the whole streaming thing, it just is like, well, we kind of heard churches are doing this. Sandy looked into it, and I got it going. And then we decided, well, we have a master plan to build a 4,000-seat auditorium, but we've got a 1,300-seat auditorium, and it's only full once a week. That's a lot of money to commit to a facility like that. A lot, if we take out low mortgages, ask for giving. And we're like, well, what else can we do? Well, let's do the multi-site thing. We just did a church plant in Prospel, 30 minutes north of us. Their own pastor, he's preaching, their own worship team. They're using our back office facilities, our finance department, all of our databases, the same server I use for our sermon archive. I've trained all of them. And then the whole streaming thing moving forward, I did an install 2 weeks ago in Frisco. His mom and pop coffee. It's called Swirl and Brew. It's a coffee shop and yogurt. And he had this stuff. I just finished the install for him with his own gear and put an HDMI video card on his PC and pulled a amplified HDMI cable and plugged it in. He's streaming church now in his coffee shop. That cost me $1,000 to pull that off because I didn't expect him to provide everything since we're partnering with him. And then that's where the streaming is. We're looking at upgrading our stream, upgrading our encoder, and upgrading maybe our CDN network, and trying to send multiple streams out so the private venues, they can have a higher quality stream than home venues. Real quick, what happened, the stream was just by accident, and we were running for about 6 months, and it started at 7, 15, it got up to about 30, and the pastor said, Andy, can I make an announcement? And I said, no. Please don't make an announcement. I said, I don't want to create expectations for something I'm not sure of. And, we were really good at planning. As a church, we're really good at planning things. And usually when we plan things, they fail. When things just kind of blossom up from the grassroots, the Lord takes it, right? And I said, well, Bruce, I compromised with him. I said, you can just offhandedly refer to it, but don't say, we're now streaming because I didn't know. Next week, is half the congregation going to show up because everybody else wanted to watch it at home? My T1 line can't handle that. It just all, and so now we're pushing about 300 on a weekend. We upgraded that interface with a Facebook, chat, Twitter, mediasocial.com. We're using them. I think so that whole interface is about $100 a month. I'm paying. We're hitting about. Our bandwidth we're hitting usage is about 300 to 400 gigabits a month. So we capped off at $750 a month for up to a terabyte, which is 75 cents a bit, which is pretty good deal. And then they also provide the Roku channel for us, which we haven't done yet. We're in the process of moving towards that. But gosh, church on a budget, if you want to do multi-site, start with DVD playback. I mean, that's the cheapest way you can go. And a week delay is fine. I mean, if you've heard of syndication on broadcast, everything's delayed. I worked for Chuck Swindell's ministry of broadcast engineer, and we had his sermons were anywhere from 30 years old to 1 year old, and we were anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks out. So it's the gospel. It's timeless. The message is timeless. So.
Yeah, so wanted to see if you guys had any questions. And let's do the first round of questions more geared toward kind of vision, strategy, live streaming versus week delay. What are the benefits, cons to that sort of thing? And then we'll really dig into the technology. How do we make it work? So go ahead.
Jeff, I know Mars Hill, I know used to, campus pastor would preach every fourth week. Is that still the case?
Yeah, Pastor Mark preaches about 40 times a year, and campus pastors go about 12 times, and maybe only 10, and we'll have some guest speakers throughout the year.
Do you find that helps the people connect with the local aspect of the church?
Yeah, it gives so we've abandoned the campus's language and even campus pastor language, and we call them Mars Hill churches, part of the Mars Hill network, and so in that we have lead pastors at each local Mars Hill church. The reason that's important is that lead pastor isn't just sort of making sure things are happening. He's got an executive pastor at each local church that makes sure everything's happening, but the lead pastor is still very much pastoring the body and is meeting with people, praying with people, marrying people, burying people, meeting other pastors, churches in the area, and then is really having a pulse on what is God doing in that local body of Mars Hill Church, whether it be in Orange County or in Seattle. And those opportunities give a place to really take what God is teaching us through the teaching Mark's doing and make it specific to where we're at as a maturity of our body. So.
Does he teach independently of Mark's series, or does he complement what Mark's already teaching?
It totally depends. So sometimes, like we're finishing up the book of Luke, and it's been 2.5 years. It's 100 sermons. So we get to do part number 100 this week, and we're done. We're so excited. So excited to move on. And in that, like, Mark took some breaks through that, and he would basically take his sermon notes and some of the research he and his staff had done, and they'd give it to the campus staff. Now, the pastors at the local churches would all take that. They'd use that, but they'd also just, like, pray and see what the Spirit would want them to speak, right? Like they're responsible for God to preach that faithfully and well to their body. So there's contextualization on that. But then there's also like, we're going to take a week off of Luke and you can preach about whatever you want to at your body. So it's both and. There's some just go choose a text. There's some, hey, here's kind of we need to keep pushing through this series and you're going to carry a handful of these this year.
Amen, go ahead.
Yeah. Shows up at a campus, they would have been getting the sermon the week previous, but now it's live.
It's very confusing. Okay. There's a guy, his name's Anthony, and it's part of his job is keeping a schedule straight for all the locations, because it's quite possible that across Mars Hill, with Mark traveling around, that there would be, depending on what church you're at, there'd be 3 different sermons playing that week. Mark live, shooting something that might be played back in the future, something that all the church as a whole is kind of, this is what we're playing. And then last week, where everyone's seeing what he's played this week, they're watching something else. And so it gets complicated for sure. And he hits his head against the wall sometimes. That's true. Ballard, yeah, I don't want to skip over that. They don't know yet. He's still there a lot. But he's there less and less. And the reason being, there's a lot of opportunity outside of Ballard. And so we don't want to just leave him in Ballard. So he's getting out and going, and like as we're planting in a bunch of new churches, like he'll go out and do baptisms and help just get the other bodies to grow in that. And
I'm trying to figure out the vision of forcing somebody into this is a new model of you don't get to choose whether it's live or not.
Yep.
And do we force that on our
So if she chooses live and no longer she can, will she then choose a different church? Go live.
I would not recommend everyone just pull their pastor out and say deal with it. We've been doing video now for like 5 years, and we are at the point where 80% of the church is watching it via video, and we can't schedule Mark around the 20%. We need to be looking at what God might have for us as a church moving forward, and to keep Mark in one place for that 20% when we're looking at trying to spread the gospel. We have to be looking at what God would have for us in that. And so we'll probably lose a couple hundred people. But as long as they love Jesus and they go to there's lots of churches that have live preachers, and they can go find another good church in Seattle that loves Jesus and preaches the gospel, and they can be involved in community and growing as a disciple. That's great. That's totally great. And we're not offended by that. And we in no way want to send people away, but we're not going to continue to meet certain expectations for our church when we feel like God is calling us to do something different. So we're not in the business of trying to please people, but we are trying to love and lead people well. And if 80%, and even Ballard, I mean, half their services are video right now, so I'm guessing it's more like 95% of the church, totally fine. They've bought into this vision that we're a video-based church for our content distribution for the sermons, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a couple churches that sort of toyed with the same idea. Well, we'll just rotate the live teacher, each week. No one will really know. I mean, North Point actually has been doing that between their campuses, and it takes a special church, a unique situation where they are accustomed to watching the pastor live. I like Jeff said, I don't think any of them would recommend doing it that way either. Really, that's a unique situation, and they've got the infrastructure to be able to handle that, where they can capture him at these different locations and create a high content piece. Because I think it's part of the culture, though. So if your culture is watching, are they really going to leave? Yeah, maybe a small percentage would actually leave. But if your teaching is that good, they're not going to leave because they're not watching them on video. But it's just not something that I've seen successful in other churches that don't have the ability and the philosophy to do it. It's just, we just want to switch them around so everybody gets him live. That's not a great reason. You've got to have some reasons to do it.
Yeah, and we're not trying to trick anyone. Right. We're not trying to just let everyone have a little bit of Mark. Like pastorally, Pastor Mark really feels called to go and kind of be on the forefront of where God's calling us to, and the newer locations and different opportunities that we have to really see people come to know Christ. And like Orange County is a great example. And we've been running about 300 a week, and he went down last Sunday to help us hard launch our new location down there. 1,000 people showed up, and we baptized 26 people. If it was video and it was another week at Mars Hill, Orange County, that would not have happened. So there's something special when he comes. People come to that, and so for us, it's God has put this on His heart, and we want to support that. And it's not trying to pull fast on anyone. I think it's incredibly important in whatever approach we take at using technology and doing multi-site that we're very straightforward, we're completely honest, and that we're very authentic. People don't want to feel like they're being a fast one pulled on them. They want it to be genuine. They want it to be just very authentic. Like, I know that this is what's going on. I am behind this. I'm a part of this. This is real. This isn't just a production, and I'm a piece of it.
Cool. Any more questions? All right, right up here. And guys, let's make sure we repeat the questions for the recording.
My pastor is very particular over who gets to share the pulpit, even, theologically. When you're doing a bunch of sites like you are, Jeff, how do you make sure you're not starting a cult out there with somebody?
Yeah.
It's an extreme.
So the question is, how do you maintain good preaching when you have multiple locations? How do you ensure that they're preaching faithfully, especially when you have a pastor that is very passionate about tight doctrine, which we have that. We are very, very committed to preaching the Bible accurately. What we do we just started doing this, is if you are a lead pastor at Mars Hill, one of our local churches, you have to go through what we call the X29 assessment. X29 is a church planning network. So you have to go through our church planning assessment to see if you are a church planner. And in that, they address a lot of doctrine, a lot of what do you believe, how do you lead your family. It's like we have Mars Hill eldership, and above that we have kind of the X29 assessment. It's a more rigorous of even our eldership, which is pretty intense already. So you gotta be an elder, you gotta go through X29, and then you actually have to get up in front of a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people, and it's kind of panel style where you'll preach for 30 minutes with no notes on a text you're given 7 days in advance, and Pastor Mark and a whole lineup of like 6 or 7 other guys that are incredible Bible teachers will give you feedback like American Idol on the spot, and will make the call if you can preach at Mars Hill or not. So it's like it.
Right. Yeah. The answer. I mean, the other answer is video. That's what the people are churches are choosing to plant churches with video because of that exact reason. And if whether it's high control or it's just we feel like we have a great product in our teaching, why are we trying to duplicate it with multiple people? Just use video, and it's actually cheaper, right? You're not paying for a teaching pastor at a site. You still need a campus pastor. But, I mean, that's what we do. We feel like we want to control the teaching, and that's what we use. Others have different models.
The teaching, it's a lot cheaper to do the technology than it is to find a good communicator. So.
There was somebody toward the back over here. Yeah, man, go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering how, between all of your campuses, do you guys keep the culture and the DNA, similar so that it feels like one church, or do you want it to not be like one church?
Yeah, for us, we only have the 3 campuses now. We actually condensed some as we went permanent with some of them. We condensed some of the sites. But our thing is that we give all the campuses boundaries. I mean, if you give them a list of what they have to do, well, they're a clone. So our model is we don't want to be a clone. We want to give them the freedom to do some things within their area and their region, things that they like. So we just give them some guidelines and boundaries, principles as a church, as a whole. Larry calls them plumb lines, and they have to live within those plumb lines. And if they go towards the edge of one of those, they might get a call. Or we might call it whatever, but it's not a tight control. There's other models of it. You guys are familiar with Life Church and some of this. I mean, there's other models of it where there's a central office and everything's duplicated, even logos, identical. So there are obviously lots of different ways, but the plumb lines for us are their guiding principles for the other sites.
I was also going to say, for us, it's for our new multi-site, the pastor of our new campus, he's actually on the elder board as well. We made them an elder. And he and the pastor, it's all about relationship, right? They've known each other for 10 years prior to him coming on board. And we do the same sermon series. And so they kind of get together and talk about the sermon series and what topic are they going to talk on. But they preach their culture. For instance, we're in the heart of suburbia, where our church plant is kind of podunk/suburbia. So he's got to craft it to that culture, and the church ministries are crafted to that culture, and it works. But it's the same gospel message delivered from a different person, I think.
Yeah, kind of similar deal with us is, they're getting the same sermon, with it being a video delivery. They're getting the same sermon, and then as we kind of onboard people, as people are getting involved in the church, becoming members, we do one big event. I think we're doing it like 3 times a year. It's a newcomer dinner where if you're new to the church, want to get plugged in, have questions about the church, we do it once for all campuses, all invited to one location. So it doesn't matter which campus you go to, you're going to attend this newcomer deal at our Tower Grove campus. And that is a chance for our lead pastor and his wife to get up on stage and share the story of the church. Here's where we came from. Here's what was on our heart when we planted this church. Here are some of the struggles we've had as the church has grown. Here's our vision for where the church is going in the future. So people who don't normally see him live because they're at these other campuses get that opportunity to see people from all of the campuses and hear from Pastor Darren and his wife and some others on this is the vision of our church. This is what we believe. This is where we're going. And then they go back to their campus and get involved in the membership classes community groups, things like that, that are all based off of the same same processes. So this membership class at every campus uses the same curriculum. So you're learning the same thing taught by a different teacher, so it's got a different spin on it, but it's the same. Our community groups are studying the sermon. You know, they're going over the sermon series as we go through it. So it's contextualized to your campus based on your campus pastor and the staff at your campus, but everybody's getting the same sermon. Everybody's going through the same basic processes.
I'm just going to add, for our philosophy of, we made a mistake, just to be upfront with you. On one of our campuses we launched, was at a school, and in the marketing of it, we said, it's going to be just like North Coast Church. We're planning this campus down the road. It's going to be exactly like same worship, same teaching. The only real thing that was true was it was the same teaching, because it was similar to North Coast Church, but it was not exactly the same. We actually shot ourselves in the foot because we had people go over there and say, no, this isn't exactly like you said. And they came back. If we would have just said it's going to have a North Coast feel, it's going to have it is the same great teaching, but it's going to have a feel like North Coast, then the people would have stayed or had an expectation. But once they get there and other people start coming, they don't even know what the North Coast Vista campus is. Right? If they've only gone to this, it is what it is. It becomes what it is there. But so we made that mistake, and since then we don't say that in that advertising.
I think the preaching helps create the DNA and the culture of your church. So if you're using video teaching, that's really gonna help dictate what's the culture, how do people interact, how are we perceived? How do we perceive one another? What is God doing? And that's going to really create your DNA and your culture, I think, especially from a spiritual and personal and relationship standpoint. As far as the actual facility, the look and feel and the place, if you're just getting into this, have the same couple of people work on all of them. So if you've got 2 of them, don't have different teams do those. Have the same people do that. So myself and one other guy have been a part of every single Mars Hill Church plant to date. So I helped with the first one, figuring it out, and have helped develop that until the 14th one. And now we actually have a team. I work on that team. We call it the development group, and that's all we do is help find buildings and turn them into Mars Hill churches. And in that, there's a lot of educating of the staff. And when they just know that that's what we do. And so when we go in, they ask us a lot of questions like, well, how do we do this? How does it work? Is it like a few really good people who understand how does your organization work? What is that DNA? What is that brand? And if people know who those people are, then they kind of become I don't know what it would be called medically, but they see it spread and grow, right? Just the cell group. But see it, you know what I'm saying? So you've got the preaching, which I think sets the DNA and the culture, and then if you've got, a couple key people that are like, and it's not necessarily the senior leadership. I don't run the church, but I just know how it works, and I've been a part of all of it. So when we go do another one, like I can walk into a building and say, this is what we're going to do, and people look at me like we're crazy, and it's like, well, I guess that's a distinctive of Mars Hill, because that's how we do it. We don't do pink lights on the stage. Like, really? Pink's so pretty. Like, it is in a sunrise. We don't do it on the stage. And that's part of who we are, and there's reasons behind that. But there's just a whole list of just random things that make up who we are. So.
Gotcha. If we wanted to move the questions more toward the technical side, if you guys have questions, okay, we're trying to do X, we don't know how to do it, or it's going to be crazy expensive to do this. Are there other ways to go about it? And then if you have other questions, don't worry, we'll hang out after this session if you guys want to come up and ask whatever. Let's talk tech stuff right there in the back.
What are the playback methods that you use? Like, how do you show it from a video sync, or how are you showing it when you're playing back the DVD or the Blu-ray or the Saturday night?
I use a Blu-ray player. It's Pioneer.
How are the people seeing it? What are they seeing up on the stage?
There's always a center screen. So even if we got low ceiling heights and we got to have that center screen up for when there's a band on stage and we've got screens on the side, we have to drop a center screen for point of reference. It's weird to not have that. Even if we choose to not have any content on the side screens or do PowerPoint on the side screens, we always have a center screen. And then we just do minimally like a 3-camera shoot. You could do just a 1-camera shoot. We did that for a long time, and it was just locked down, and it was kind of a medium establishing. I put a mat and some tape on the ground and said, Pastor Mark, if you feel hard ground, you have walked off the stage in Shoreline. And he didn't ever walk off the stage in Shoreline. He was really good about learning how to be in a box. If you can afford multiple cameras, then you can get kind of to a multi-camera shoot. And you could do 2 cameras, you could do 3. We're doing 5 right now. And so it cuts in between. And we cut every 8 seconds or so. That's if you look at like the stats on newscasts or Tonight Show or any type of a broadcast type thing. Usually they cut every 8 seconds or so, because that's about how long our attention lasts for. And you can find tons of blogs online that give you the methodology of how to cut between what camera shots to go from this to that. But we just cut.
Yeah, for most of the churches I've seen, including us, we've kept it pretty simple. Single camera. We're not trying to create a TV show, right? All we're trying to do is bring the pastor into that other room. And so when you're sitting in a live venue, your perspective of the pastor never changes. Right? So if you're looking at the side, that's exactly what we try to do. A medium, ours was a little bit of medium close-up, and we actually give him room we slide the camera as he goes side to side, and so we follow him across there. But again, multi-cameras get into more complexity, more staff, if you can do it, if you have the people. But again, we're not trying to create, and I'm actually like, imagine 11-foot tall screen with just a headshot. That would look kind of strange in that room. So you've got to be real careful with your shots. It takes more skill, more knowledge to do multiple cameras. There are churches that are doing a great job with it. But for us, we've kept it very simple to be able to staff and be duplicated and look like the same shot every single week, because all we're trying to do is bring him into that other room. That's it.
Yeah, similar deal for us is we do a single camera, kind of the knee up shot. He's got like an 8-foot box on stage that he just knows he's got to stay in that box, and he does really well. We haven't had issues with that. We're using like a 10 to 14 foot wide screen, center, always center for us, and it seems to work pretty well. We went with the single camera for 2 reasons: A, budget, because we couldn't afford to do multiple cameras, couldn't afford to do it well, anyways, and as we're introducing video. Because what happened with us is I think we had 3 campuses at one point that were actually all getting live teaching. We had staggered our preaching schedule to where he would preach at one campus, hop in the car, go preach at another campus, and hop in the car and come back. And so we had people who had been accustomed to seeing Darren live, and we were going to have to transition them from that to video. So we just thought it would feel most natural to see a static shot versus seeing a switched shot or tight close-ups or whatever. And we've just stuck with that because it's worked well for us. What do we got? Right here.
With multi-site and multi-venue approach, what's the necessity of being able to duplicate your gear? Same stuff in every venue, or do you leave it up to those campuses to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do? Why would it be to have?
Right, absolutely. Duplicate gear. For us, our philosophy has been even in on-site, because we're a volunteer-based model. We use volunteers, and for me to throw a volunteer in another room at the last minute and have different gear would just be detrimental to our service. Fixing gear, keeping gear in stock, replacing something. We try to do the same philosophy as Mars Hill. We try to keep things and gear that we buy, something that you can possibly obtain at a Walmart or something like that if a need goes down. Blu-ray, we're doing the same ABC HD Blu-ray playback. So same idea, but I see huge benefits in keeping gear the same. Same projectors, you keep the same bulbs in stock. You're not hunting through 25 different bulbs to find the one that you need. So a lot of pluses in that. Sometimes so much so that it can hurt a little bit of the quality in some areas if you're trying to keep the gear exactly the same. Right? Some venues need something a little bit better, so you have to decide, well, is it worth the upgrade in quality for the long-term potential issue of somebody coming in not knowing how to use that system? And sometimes it's worth the trade-off, but you got to think about that sometimes. Or when old gear goes down and is out, how do you replace it with the same gear? It's no longer available. So do you go to a new model? You're always in flux with those kind of questions when you have multiple venues, but it's as much as possible, my philosophy has been to keep the same.
Yeah, I preach standardization all the time, just to whatever extent you're able to do it. But I do make one clarifying thing is it's really, really important to me to standardize what I would call user-facing gear. Anything a volunteer is going to touch, I want that to be standardized for training, for troubleshooting, et cetera. The stuff that is just, okay, we've got this converter that's going to live in the back of a rack forever and no one's ever going to see it unless it breaks, that's less important to me, but I still try to standardize that if I'm able.
Standardization, yes. I've got a dozen M7 CLs, 30 of the same Panasonic projectors, all the same video. I mean, the video playback units are all identical. We don't want to see anomalies on different playback and issues with that. Totally key. And just bouncing off of the user interface, when you're evaluating equipment, people run to what is the church. I don't know if I can say this. There are a lot of products geared towards the church market that are terrible. So stay away from terrible equipment. There's a lot of cost-effective, solid solutions, and maybe it's geared towards the church market, maybe it's not. When you're buying an audio console, it's the most important piece to have a good user interface. We love the M7 for the price, for the intuitiveness of it. Finding an intuitive sound console isn't easy. There's a lot of really silly consoles out there that make no sense at all. And it's not the best sounding console, but price for functionality, for the user interface, it's just the most straightforward thing out there. And it hasn't been, there's nothing better for the money at this point. So even though it's been out for a long time.
Yeah. Philosophy for me personally is your equipment is only as good as the people running it, right? So who are you using? Are you going to use a volunteer team, whether it's an offsite campus or an onsite campus? Well, that really dictates what I can buy, right? I can't, if it was a paid professional, they're paid to run that piece of gear no matter what it is. I can buy whatever and they have to learn it. But when I'm using a weekend warrior, well, they're going to forget the next time they come around to what that piece of gear was. And so I drive home that philosophy of who are you going to actually have running it, because that has to dictate what you buy, not just the cost, because sometimes you actually pay more for something that's simpler to run.
I'm not the most technically savvy person, actually. Like, I'm really dangerous, but I have no experience. So, like, I've never really ran in front of a house, but I'm not going to buy an audio console that with the knowledge that I have, I can't figure out. So I have a lot of, I understand how sound works, and I have theory, and I've been around it for, I mean, I didn't do this before I got hired, so I've been doing this now for 7 years. But if I can't walk up on the show floor to something that works well, then 5 minutes. If I can't walk up to the show floor to a new piece of equipment and figure it out without having an hour demo, I don't want it. So, and I've had equipment in my building that I get an 8-hour demo, and my audio guy is still clueless, and it's like, there's no way we're gonna ever even consider buying that, even though it's like the standard for most people.
All right, we got like 5 minutes. A couple more questions. Right here in the front, I know you had one.
So am I hearing you guys right in that all your multi-campuses are volunteer-based
Yes.
tech people?
Yes.
No hired tech people at all in your multi-campus?
We use volunteers for everything. So we've got 14 locations, and we don't use, we have 2 paid staff people only at the largest campuses. So you're asking if we use volunteers, or if we use volunteers for everything, and the answer is yes. So we're a huge church, and we don't use paid contractors or staff for anything. Even at a conference, if someone's coming in, maybe we would pay our volunteers a little stipend, but we don't contract employees to come in. We're not against it. We've just been blessed to have a really young church and a lot of people who are available and willing to help. Now, as you move out into the suburbs or have an older generation church, or you have fathers and moms who they can't give up 10 hours on a Sunday, like you might have to contract it, and don't be against that. There's nothing wrong with that. It just costs money, and no one likes to spend money in the church market.
Yeah, we've got, including myself, 2 paid staff guys, or 2 paid tech guys. Between our 4 campuses, everything is run by volunteers.
Yeah, I'm the only paid staff at my church, and what we've done with our models, because we're all push it down to volunteers. I really try not to push buttons on Sunday mornings unless I have to. And what we did with our recent multi-site church plant is we actually had tech volunteers and musicians that volunteer to go to the next campus. And what was great about that, again, with the standard equipment, we run the M7CL and the LS9, and they're similar interface. It just was a smooth transition. We use the same Aviom system. It's all more or less wired the same way. And something I've done is on my Tech Arts webpage, I've put tutorials on there, the links to all the Yamaha training tutorials. And the new sound guy, he started in May, green. I mean, as green as you can get. And I said, you need to be here every Thursday when I set up sound in this worship center. So what you're going to be doing on Sunday mornings at your new site's going to be similar. I said, and you need to be going through these tutorials. So when I'm talking about the soundboard, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't have to go back and explain myself. And then I have a DVD training video on mixing. I said, you need to watch this. You need to play the game. When you come and work with me on Thursdays, I'm going to be firing off random questions at you to see if you've been doing your homework, because you're going to thank me that first Sunday you go live, and when you have feedback, you know that it's going to be between 250 and 500 hertz roughly, and you can just do a big sweep and pull it out real quick, or just say you got to train them. And if you have a good volunteer team, you can use them to ship them off to the next location if they so choose. And that helped us tremendously.
Is your training for sale?
Is my training for sale? Yeah, I don't remember that. I'll get with me later. I'll tell you the name of the DVD. I don't think I have that up, but it just, I find different things that are helpful, and I try not to break any copyright laws. I do my best. If I do it, it's not on purpose.
I think we got one more question. We'll get you right here.
What was the service here in Dallas that you're using? Was it Media Social or something?
Yeah. So Media Social, they're based out of Seattle, actually. It's a JW Studios or something. Anyways, yeah, it's Media Social. It's an interface, right? And so it has a backbone architecture to it where you can go in and so our multi-site, aside from our church plant, is a virtual. So we can schedule any service we want through the week to play automatically. So Sunday after the last service, head and tell it, encode it, load it to their site, and then we'll go in and schedule what times of each day of the week that it's going to play that particular service back automatically. And then Jan, who's our creative director, oversees the host pastors that facilitate chat and all that. And if you go on ChristFellowshipHome.com, you can see how it's ran, and there's a title page if you have our website where you can go, and that's like $100 a month. And then but we use that same interface for our live stream on Sunday mornings, where I have our live video player window, if you will, that's embedded, and we automate that, and it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm.
Real quick survey: multi-site, permanent site, or multi-site setup teardown? Oh, good. Just the survey.
Repeat the question.
He was asking, are your sites permanent or set up teardown? 3 of our 4 are in permanent buildings. 1 is portable. What we've seen is we typically end up starting a campus in a portable model, and then as they grow and get healthier, they're able to move into a permanent home. But I think we need to.
Yeah, we're half and half. What we found is about 400 to 500 for us in a portable site, usually caps for some reason, and then we move them to a permanent site because they don't grow beyond that.
We've got 4 portable, 10 fixed, of which I think we own 5, so at least the other 5. But yeah, same thing. We can hit a threshold with the portable.
All right, guys.
Same.
Thanks for coming. Remember, if you would, please fill out the evaluations. That would be great. And then we'll be hanging out if you have specific questions.